Good evening, dear students. Thank you very much for being early with me. Let's just wait for a couple of more minutes so we can have the rest of your classmates, okay, within the reunion. But thank you very much for your punctuality, all right? All right, wonderful. Good evening again. Apparently the orders are going to be delayed a little bit, so of course I value your time and I don't want to waste it. So let's just start, okay? Let's get started tonight. I think it's a wonderful time. I'm very happy, that we are starting a new week. For your mind, last week we have been having excursus on the speaking section. We have seen everything related to the first task of the speaking section. Also, of course, the general aspects of the section as such. We have seen what equipment you're going to receive on the speaking section. We have seen how much time you're going to have for the entire section. We have gotten into all the details of how to respond to the first task. We have seen as well, for example, how to manage the headphones, how to manage the notes. I have shared with you some of my hacks as well, the ones that I used when I took the exam and helped me a lot, right? You remind those tips that I recommended you. So now we're going to start a new week, and this week is going to be for learning about the second and the third task of the speaking section. Okay, so there's a lot of material before us to study, and there's a lot that we're going to be commenting on. Okay, so please join me in this wonderful excursus that I have prepared for you. And let's start with the second and the third task, okay? Because next week we're going to start with the fourth task and with the writing section. So this is going to be the last week, let's say, just for the speaking section, all right? We're going to try to, as I said at the beginning of our classes, have theoretical and practical classes, okay? So today, we're going to be getting into all the details and all about the second task and third task of the speaking section, okay? So let's get into it, if you agree. I'm going to open this, I'm going to share it with you, and I think I can close this. Yes, one, I can close this. 1, 2. All right, there we are. I was, having a class with the student, and then it was a personal class. Let's say it was a mentorship for just one person, and I was asking her where she's living right now in the U.S. because she is right now staying at the U.S. Because of a scholarship that she got, something like that, in a program in Johns Hopkins University, very prestigious institution. And she was commenting me that she is living right now in Maryland, which is in a state that is very nearby to New York, by the way. All right, it doesn't matter, not important. Okay, so let's get into the presentation. PowerPoint. All right. Okay, so speaking slides. Here we are. Okay, so as we had been learning last week, we have gone through all of this, right? Let's remind, just brief summary. We have seen the speaking section. We have seen the general aspects. We have seen that this is going to last 50 minutes. That is to say, the shortest section of the entire exam. You're going to have two types of questions, independent and integrated tasks. And to this point, we have just seen the independent task, that is to say, the one that asks you to have your opinion, experience, and information as the basis for your response. But now, and from now on, that is to say, we're going to be looking at the integrated tasks, that if you remind is the other type of question you're going to find in this section, okay? But well, of course, we talked about the headphones. I recommended you to have them very well firm on your head. I recommended you to, of course, adjust your microphone to have it in a good distance to talk or to speak in this case. I recommended you to adjust the size of the headphones so that you can have it firm on your head. And for, of course, if you make some, sudden and rough move, as for example, scratching your ear or something, is not going to fall down. And of course, we have seen all the details of this part. We have also, or I have also shared a quick hack for you in this section. I shared with you how important it is to stay out of the room for the entire 10 minutes of break, so that you can be the last person getting into the computation room. And of course, you're going to be the one who is going to be able to listen to other people's responses, and of course, to start the section a little bit later. And that is going to allow you, of course, to have less distraction, because most of the people are going to be ending their speaking section until that point, okay? Remind this, you can, of course, rewatch our presentation or our last week presentation on our YouTube channel. That, of course, you have to remind, we are always and constantly uploading these classes to that YouTube channel that I have shared with you. So you can go there and check it out whenever you want to remind something about what we have discussed, okay? Just in case. All right. We have seen the speaking section. The first one, remind that in this case, your role or your task or your particular objective was to imitate Ben Shapiro. You remind that we had said that it is important in this case for this particular response, okay, not for the other ones. That is what we're going to see right now. But for this, the first speaking task that we have seen last week, better expressing, you have to be always expressing your opinion and defending it, which is something very important, right? We have seen how to do it. We have seen recommendations. We have seen as well some structure to follow, okay? It's part of, I hope that you have taken notes on this structure, because when we continue, maybe, I hope actually that both of you are going to be able to reserve your personal calls with me, those one-to-one calls of 15 minutes that are going to be used just for practicing for the speaking section. So please feel free to reserve them whenever you want. Remind that I have sent a document to the WhatsApp group in which you can find the link to the website, and also, of course, all the necessary steps to follow so you can register and pick up some available dates and times in order to have these calls with me. And we're going to use this particular template in order for us to practice, okay? So please remind it and have it on mind. Okay, and having said that, having had that particular summary, we now come and arrive to our today's task. That is to say, the second task of the speaking section, all right? And right from the beginning, maybe you're noticing there is another title here. This is not an independent speaking task anymore, but this is an integrated speaking task. Now, why is that integrated? Maybe it's necessary for us to remind. This is integrated because of two reasons. First of all, because in this case, you're going to require different skills in English to respond to this question. You're going to notice why. Because in this case, you're going to be reading a passage before responding and listening to a conversation before responding. And you're going to need, of course, to make use of those abilities of yours in reading and listening in order to make a good response afterwards, okay? That is the first reason why this is integrated. That is to say, you are integrating, you're using different abilities of yours in order to respond to this particular task or question. Now, the second reason, okay, why this is called integrated task is because in this case, you are not going to depend on your own opinion, experience, information, and data in order to respond. Remind that the other question, the other type of question that we have seen last week was called independent task. And I told you the reason for that was that you need to rely just on you, right? You were independent in that task because you were depending on your own ability and your own knowledge in order to respond. For this task and for the other ones that are going to follow the second, you're not going to have that particular scenario. No, in this case, you're going to have to depend on the material that ETS is going to offer you to make a summary of that material. And your summary, the one that you elaborate and that you compose of these two materials that I'm going to be talking about right now, don't worry, you are going to make that summary your response. That is to say, your response is going to be the summary you have done of those materials ETS has given you. Okay, so as you can see, you're going to be depending on something that ETS has given you. You're not going to depend, in this case, of your own knowledge, no, but you're just going to be depending on what they give you, and with regard or depending on what they have talked about in the material they give you, you're going to have to respond, of course, following that particular outline or following that material or following that information. We're going to get into that, don't worry, you're going to understand. But just in case you wanted to know what integrated speaking task means, depending on what ETS gives you as material and also combining different skills of yours in order to respond to the question, okay? Now, what else? For this task, you will be reading a short written passage that is 80 to 100 words long, okay? This is the first thing I wanted to mention. Remember that when we were discussing this at the beginning, I told you, in this case, you're going to depend on the material that ETS is going to give you. What I meant by material is two things. First of all, the first thing you're going to be doing in this particular task is reading a very short passage about, in this case, an announcement or change on a campus university, okay? So that is going to be the first material you're going to receive from ETS. As I mentioned, it is going to be a reading passage about a situation that is going on campus, all right? Of course, in a imaginary university, okay? Not, of course, one that is real, but in an imaginary university, there's going to be something happening, maybe a change in their bus service, maybe a change in their professors' staff, or maybe some modification of classes schedule, but something is going to be going on campus, okay? In this imaginary university, as I mentioned, as I commented to you. So you're going to be reading that change, that event, that situation going on that campus. That is going to be the reading passage you're going to have to read, all right? And as you can mention, and as you can see, it is super short. It is from 80 to 100 words, okay? It is not going to take you more than 20 minutes to read it, more than 20 seconds to read it. And by the way, in order to read this reading passage, you are going to have a limited time, okay? There's going to be a boundary. You're not going to be able to read this reading passage in more than 45 seconds. That is to say, if you exceed those 45 seconds, the computer is going to immediately take you directly to the second material you're going to be evaluating and receiving, okay? So you need to know that there is a limitation or there is a boundary here. You have 45 seconds as a maximum to read the reading passage that, as I have mentioned, is from 80 to 100 words long. And after that, the system or well, in this case, it's basically the algorithm, right, of the computer is going to take you directly to the other part. What is that other part, or what is that other material you're going to receive? The other material is this one. After you read the reading passage, remember you're going to have 45 seconds, okay? You will be listening to a conversation regarding the announcement. That is to say, the second material you're going to receive from ETS is going to be a listening item or a listening audio, okay? And this audio is going to be a conversation about the same topic or announcement you have read about, okay? So this is very important. If you, for example, read in the reading passage about, let's say, a change on classes schedules, let's say they are changing the mathematics classes from the morning to the afternoon, all right? They have decided to make that change. You are going to be reading that passage, and afterwards, the listening item you're going to receive is going to be a conversation of two students discussing that change. Maybe one of them is going to be a mathematics major student, and he's going to say to another student, oh, I dislike this change because it's not going to allow me to take other classes in physics and to prepare myself for my thesis, excuse me, and I'm so angry, and this seems to me to be disgusting. I don't like this change. I'm going to complain. And the other one is going to respond, oh, why? Why are you so disappointed? Weren't you interested in having more free time in the morning? And they're going to be, as I say, conversating, okay? They're going to be talking between each other, but they're going to comment on the same topic that your reading passage was about, okay? That is the idea. Now, one of the speakers will be expressing their personal opinion about the news. As I mentioned, maybe in the illustration that I have given you, one of them is going to be a mathematics professor, and he's going to be expressing to one of his friends, hey, I don't like this. This is something that is going to take me, or is going to provoke in me a lot of difficulties because I now will be completely unable to take my classes for knowing how to prepare my thesis. Or he's going to say, I don't know, now I'm not going to be able to work out at the gym, in the university, whatever, right? He's going to express his opinion. Now, after he expresses his opinion, he's going to always mention arguments and reasons for holding that opinion. Maybe this is something similar and familiar to you, because that was exactly what we were doing in the last task, right? You remind that we had to offer our opinion, right, about a topic, and we had to offer some reasons why we're having that opinion in order to sustain it. Now, in this case, in the conversation, the student is going to replicate that. That is to say, he's going to be expressing his or her opinion about a topic, and then he or she is going to be offering some arguments and reasons why he holds that opinion, okay? He's not just going to express what he thinks, but he's going to defend it. Okay, so this is maybe something familiar to you, and it's fine because if you notice, there's a pattern here. ETS is very interested in always allowing people to offer or to express their opinions and defending them. So in this case, you're going to listen to people expressing their opinions and defending them. And what is going to be your job in this case? What is going to be your task, or what you have to do? Well, what you have to do is super simple. You have to summarize both materials, no more than that. All right? There's a simple answer. Your job for this particular task and what is going to constitute your response is going to be simply summarizing both materials. You are not going to have the necessity in this case to offer your opinion. You are not going to offer any arguments in this case. You are not going to complement anything that the speakers mentioned, or you're not going to complement the reading passage, for example. No, your only job here, your only work is going to be summarizing the material, okay? Summarizing both materials and then delivering that summary as your response. Now, before we get into the other slide, I wanted to call your attention and to direct you towards the picture that I have included here. If you notice, this is the picture of a journalist, right? Why did I decide to include the picture of a journalist in this particular slide? Well, the reason is super simple, because in this slide, I want you to understand that your role for this second task of the speaking section is going to be what? It's going to be being a journalist. It's going to be working as a journalist. Why? Because remember, a journalist, okay, what is a journalist? Un periodista, right? So a journalist, normally in his day-to-day routine, what he has to do is he has to collect information, right? He has to collect information from different sources. He needs to convey that information through a summary. That is to say, he takes notes, right, on those materials or information sources. He brings that material. He makes a summary of that information he has managed to collect. And then he simply delivers that summary to his audience. That is to say, he never adds or complements that information. No, he tries to be very objective, right? He tries to stick to the topic. That is to say, he doesn't modify the content of the information he has managed to gather. No, he just summarizes it and and then he delivers that summary. That summary. It's a summary, okay? The only thing he does, as I say, it's summarizing things and delivering that summary to his audience. And that is what you're going to do. You're going to be working as a journalist. Why? Because we are going to offer you two different sources of information, the reading passage and the listening item. And your task or your job is going to be simply collecting information, that is to say, taking notes on both materials. You're going to write down a summary of those materials, and your response is going to be that summary. Okay, you don't have to add anything out of you, not your opinion, okay, not your own knowledge, not your own perception of the situation, anything. Okay, the only thing you do here is to remain attached and stick to the information. You need to be super objective. Okay, this is not a moment for you to express your opinion. You had a chance to do that in the first task. From now on, that is not going to be necessary nor allowed, by the way. Okay, you don't have to do it. It's not that you preferably don't have to do it. No, it's that you don't have to do it, because in this case, you are not required to give your opinion. No, but to remain objective and stick to the topic. All right. So here's how the timing works. As I was mentioning, you're going to have 45 seconds to read, all right, the reading passage about the situation going on campus. Afterwards, you're going to have this audio clip or audio item of 1 minute, that is to say, is going to last for 1 minute. You're going to listen to it, of course, while taking notes on the audio, because you are not going to be able to listen to it again. No, just once, all right? After you finish this, that is to say, listening and reading your materials, you're going to have, or you're going to receive 30 seconds of preparation. That is to say, ETS is going to give you, after you finish listening to this audio clip, 30 seconds for you to prepare your response for this particular question. Your response, as I am mentioning, and I'm going to repeat it again, is simply going to be the summary you have done or you have composed of these materials, okay? But they are going to give you this extra 30 seconds for you to organize your information so that you can have it, of course, very firm and to have it correct, all right? That is what you have to do. As I mentioned, the only thing they're going to have to do is to make a summary, and that summary is going to be your response. So in order to prepare and organize that response, you're going to have 30 seconds. After your 30 seconds end, you're going to have 60 seconds to deliver that response. Remember, for the other task, we had just 45 seconds to deliver our response, right? In this case, we're going to have 15 extra seconds, okay? You're going to have 60 seconds or 1 minute to deliver your response, all right? As you can see, it's a matter of simply what? It's a matter of preparing a response and delivering it in just 1 minute, okay? It's not that much, it's not a great difference, of course, but you're going to find that it's considerable because you're going to need as much time as you have available and it is possible to you in order to include all the information you're going to gather from the different sources, okay? So I'm going to show you, okay, before I give you some time to make questions, I'm going to show you through our simulator how is this going to look like, because of course a visual reference is always better, right? That through this visual reference, I think you're going to be able to understand what I'm talking about. So a custom practice, speaking section, second speaking task. Here, this option and this option. Okay, so let me show you. So first thing you're going to receive once you start with the second task, instructions, of course. As you can see, question type, task number 2. You will now read a short passage and then listen to a conversation on the same topic, as I already talked to you about. You will then be asked to question, or excuse me, a question about them. That is to say, the short passage and the listening item. After you read the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. All right. Now, what is the first thing you're going to be receiving after you receive the instructions or after you read the instructions? It's going to be the reading passage. The reading passage is always going to be prefaced by this very little instruction. It says, or this very little commentary on what the topic or what the reading passage is about. In this case, it says, the university has decided to change its transportation options for students. Read the university website's announcement about the decision. You will have 45 seconds to read the announcement. Begin reading now, okay? And there's going to be a sound like a beep, like beep, and after you listen to that beep, beep, you're going to have, as I say, 45 seconds to read this particular passage, okay? In this case, of course, we're not going to read it, but as you can see, it's no more than 100 words. And let me tell you that for this task, the difficulty is super manageable. Okay, you can understand this. It's a very simple and non-complicated grammar, nor vocabulary, nor expressions. This is going to begin to get difficult once we arrive to the third task, because the material you're going to receive in that task is going to be academic material. That is to say, you're not going to be listening about daily things anymore. No, but the topics you're going to read about and listen to are going to be academic topics. That is to say, classes delivered by professors, scientific researches, scientific investigations, scientific articles. So in that case, of course, the complexity is going to augment. Nonetheless, for now, the complexity, it's very simple, I would say. All right. So as you can see, you're going to have 45 seconds to read something like this. After that, you can, of course, always press the button next if you have decided that you have ended out with all and that you don't want to stay here for more time, you can press next. Or if you want to remain for the 45 seconds, as I say, once the 45 seconds are over, the system is going to take you directly to the other part. And what is going to be that other part? Let me show you. As I was mentioning, it's going to be a conversation on the same topic you read about. In this case, let's see just for a couple of seconds what this is about.
Now listen to two students discussing the announcement.
So did you hear that the university is cutting its transportation budget and ending all bus service?
I did hear that. But it's no big deal, right? I mean, the university is also compensating all students with $50 vouchers for public transportation. Right. The vouchers can be used...
Well, it's not necessary for us to listen to everything, but as you can see, it's going to be a conversation of two students, okay? Most of the time, rarely is more than two students. I would say 90% of the time it's two students. But the point is that they are going to be talking about the same topic you read about. As you managed to listen, I think, in those few seconds, they were discussing the new bus service, which, if you remind, was the topic of what? Of the reading passage that we were looking at some moments before, okay? The university bus service, and they are talking about that, the university bus service in this other conversation, okay? So after you finish this, as I mentioned, again, the computer or the system is going to take you to another menu that is going to look like this. Look at this. So it says, now, the female student expresses her opinion about why she disagrees with the university's new policy. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion. As you can see, that is your task, and that is always going to be your task. That is to say, summarizing the reading passage and summarizing what she considers about that particular topic or that particular change in the university. And then you're gonna have to, of course, summarize her reasons or his reasons for holding that opinion, okay? Preparation time, as I was mentioning, 30 seconds, and response time, 60 seconds. The way this is gonna happen is that, again, the instructor is going to read, and he's going to say, begin preparing your response after the beep, beep. And of course, you're gonna have that sound, beep. And after that sound comes to your ears, then you know that your 30 seconds are already counting down. That is to say, you have 30 seconds in order to organize and prepare your response. After that, again, the instructor through your headphones is going to say, now please start delivering your response after the beep. Beep. And again, after you listen to the beep, then you know that your 60 seconds are counting, and then you have to speak, of course, because your response is being recorded and you don't have more than one chance to speak, all right? So that is what it's going to look like. Now, I want to give you some time for you to make questions, please, dear students. Do you have any question? Paola, Nata, any question about this? We're fine. All right. What about you, Paola? Fine?
Yes, teacher.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. So now that you have understood, let's continue then. Okay. So that is what the section in the second task is going to look like. Okay. Like this. Now let's continue. Of course, I have some examples for you because I think we all agree by looking at some examples, it's way easier to understand. Okay. So as it happened with the first task, I have recorded some responses of me for this particular task, and we're going to listen to them. Of course, first of all, we're going to get into the material that I responded about. So let me guide you to this part. Okay, so let's read together, and then we're going to listen to my responses, okay? It says, okay, so imagine that this is the actual exam, all right? You're gonna see, as I mentioned, first of all, the instruction. It says, the university is planning to offer a free language course. Read a short article announcing it and give yourself 4 or 5 seconds to read the article. Then listen to students discussing the same topic. Now, let's read together, okay? I'm gonna paste it as well in the chat box so you can have a better glance to it. Maybe you want to paste it to a Word document, but we're going to read this together, okay? Just as a matter of better comprehension. So let's read together. It says, the university offers, or it's planning to offer, free Spanish courses this semester. Due to an influx of exchange students from Spain and Latin America, starting this trimester, the university will be offering free Spanish language tuition for interested parties. Participation in these courses is limited, however, and preference will be given to those students taking part in activities directly related to the exchange program. Go to the university website for further details, all right? So as you can see, that is the difficulty of the reading passage. It's not that much complicated. It's a very simple and I would say easy grammar to follow, all right? So this is always going to be more or less what they're going to look like, all right? Always about something going on campus, never about anything that could be considered serious, but always about trivial and daily things, all right? So after you read this, as I say, if you have not ended with your 4 or 5 seconds, I recommend you the following, okay? Listen to me. If you have already finished to read this reading passage after the 4 or 5 seconds you have ended, what is my recommendation for you, dear students? My recommendation is start outlining, as I'm going to show you right now, don't worry. Start outlining on your sheet of paper, because remember that throughout the entire section or throughout the entire exam, actually, you're going to be allowed to have a sheet of paper and to write down your notes on that paper. I would recommend you that if you don't use the entire 4 or 5 seconds, and if you have extra time, begin writing down your summary of this section, okay? So that you don't rely just on your 30 seconds that you're gonna have after receiving both materials to write down your response. No, but if you have extra time here, use that time in order to start writing down what is going to be your summary of this reading passage, okay? If you don't finish with the 4 or 5 seconds. If you take more time in reading, well, don't worry, you're gonna have time to prepare your response after you listen to the listening item, okay? So that will be my recommendation for you. Now, let's listen, please, to the conversation with regard to this topic, okay? So please, I want you to take a piece of paper with you, grab as well a pencil or a pen, and please try to apply all the recommendations that I have given you for taking notes, okay? Because remember that we have been learning about how to take notes during a lot of sessions, and my desire is that through this conversation you're going to listen, you have the ability or the capacity to practice, okay, and to take efficient notes. So please, I'm gonna reproduce the conversation, and please listen and take your notes, okay? Let's listen now.
Now listen to two students discussing the Spanish classes.
What do you think about the Spanish courses the university is offering?
I'm not sure. I mean, last semester they did the same thing with an IT course, and it was booked out within 10 minutes of the registration from going online.
You think it'll be the same for this?
Well, yeah. Spanish is a popular language to learn, and look at what it says about the preferences given. There are going to be loads of students who fit the bill for preferential access.
Well, I'm going to give it a look anyway. I might get lucky.
Sure. To be honest, I think it would be better if they didn't make the course free. A lot of people will sign up just because they don't have to pay anything, then not turn up to half of the classes. If you have to pay for something, you're more likely to use it.
I'm not sure. I mean, this way it's accessible even to poorer students.
I guess so. I suppose I'm still annoyed that I couldn't do the IT course last semester. I really needed the chance to brush up on my computing skills.
All right, wonderful. And as you can perceive, that is also going to be the difficulty of this speaking items or of this listening items, okay? It's not going to be that complicated. As you can notice, it's just two persons discussing very trivial matters, right? What they believe about this change in the university, not very difficult, all right? So what is going to happen next? As I was mentioning you, you're going to have 30 seconds to prepare your response, okay? In this case, imagine that I have already taken my 30 seconds to prepare my response. Of course, I'm going to teach you how to do it later. Just give me a second. I wanted to show you an example before. So now, after I have finished my 30 seconds of preparation, again, there's going to be a voice in my headphones that is going to say, now please start delivering your response after the beep, beep, and then I will respond to something like this, okay? Please pay attention to my response. Try to notice what lines or phrases I use for starting the response, what phrases I use for connecting my ideas, or what phrases I use for ending the response, okay? Pay attention to that. Let's go. Let's listen to my response. In the reading passage, we observe that the university wants to offer free Spanish courses since next trimester to all students, but especially to those who are engaged with exchange programs. On the other hand, we also observe a student who disagrees with this modality because she considers that just as it happened with the IT classes, so many people, just because the courses are free, are going to register, and many students are going to stay out of the lessons. She also considers that given that Spanish is a very popular language, many students will also be super interested in learning this language, and many people will simply stay out of the lessons. She also considers that the university should make these courses not free but pay, and that way just the students who are really interested in these courses will take part of them, and not just the students who, because the courses are free, get into. Wonderful. So I think this is a very good example of how a response for the second task should look like. And if you manage to understand what I was saying, I never said, right, what my opinion was with regard to the topic that I was commenting about. No, I never mentioned, for example, if I agree with the speaker or with the student, or if I found, for example, her response to be irrational, or if I found her response to be, I don't know, too exaggerated or something like that. Because I mean, although I found it to be exaggerated or something, I have no reason for mentioning. That is the point. That if you consider that the response of the student is inaccurate or exaggerated or something, don't mention it, okay? Just stick, as I say, to the information they have given you. Summarize the materials as I have done, all right? Now, let's get into another example before we get into, of course, the templates for this section, okay? But no, actually, before we listen to that, let's have some recommendations for this section, okay? Oh no, well, let's listen to the other example. I think it's going to be more beneficial for us to listen. Okay, so let's go with another one so you can also understand. So the second here, wonderful here. So again, a reading passage and the conversation. Let's read together. I'm gonna paste it as well to the chat box so that you can read it there if you want. Look at the chat box, sending it right now. Right, there you have. So let's read together, okay? This is a different topic. This is about, well, but again, as I say, the generic, let's say, tendency, it's always about something going on campus, okay? Something like a change, like a modification, but always something happening within a university, all right? Now let's see. It says the campus fitness center will permanently close at the end of this semester. This decision was made by the university administration in coordination with representatives of the Students' Association. Unfortunately, the building currently housed in the center is very old, and the university can no longer afford the cost of maintaining it or providing heat and air conditioning as required. Furthermore, the popularity of the center has declined since the university formed partnerships with several private fitness centers in the city. These partnerships mean that all full and part-time students can have access to 5 privately owned gyms across the city at no cost. All right, so that's it. Now that we have read this, as I say, if you have remaining time in your 45 seconds to continue being in this section or in this particular window, I recommend you to continue here, not to press the button that says next to move on to the other part, but use those extra seconds for you to write down more or less what is going to be your summary of this reading passage, okay? That is my recommendation. Now, after you finish the 45 seconds, there's going to be, again, the instructor saying, now listen to a conversation on the same topic, and then the conversation is going to start. Let's listen, okay? Again, please take your notes, try to apply all my recommendations for this part, all right? Let's go.
What do you think about this announcement? To be honest, I'm completely opposed to the plan.
Really? Why?
Because shutting down the fitness center isn't really going to save much money. I mean, sure, the building is really old, but even if it isn't used on a regular basis, the school still has to maintain it. They have to make sure it is safe and that it doesn't become a fire hazard or something like that.
I didn't think about that.
Right, and even tearing the building down will be expensive because of all the construction workers they'll have to hire. Plus, once it's gone, we're going to need to replace it with something new, so we shouldn't shut down the gym just to save money.
You make a good point.
And it's not like all the students can easily use the gyms in the city. The closest one is a 30-minute drive from school. How are people who live in dorms on campus supposed to reach them if they don't have their own car?
You know, I took a taxi to one of the gyms and it cost nearly $20. I can't afford to pay that much money every time I want to exercise.
Exactly. And even if you can afford to pay for a taxi, it will be really challenging to get one if you want to exercise late at night. I don't think that was really considered when the decision to close the fitness center was made.
Okay, there we are. So in this case, as you can observe, it's a different topic, but nonetheless is, of course, as I am mentioning, about that same genre, right? Del mismo género, let's just say, about something going on campus. Okay, so now let's listen to my illustration response for this particular topic. And please, now I want you to try to notice, okay? There are some phrases, there are some specific words that I always repeat in my responses, all right? And that is fine. Why? Because I am following a structure, okay? I am following a template. And that template, I'm gonna share with you a little bit afterwards in the class. So don't worry, we're going to be getting into that and learning what is the template or the structure for us to follow in this particular response. But nonetheless, try to listen by yourself and notice what are those phrases that I am repeating from the other response that you have already listened to, okay? Try to notice that structure, and then you're going to be able to understand my explanation a little bit better, okay? Let's go. To begin with, we have seen in the reading passage that the university plans to close the campus fitness center permanently because they consider that nobody uses it and because they consider that students can go to the private gyms that they have hired across the city, and also because the maintenance costs for these fitness centers are too high for the university. On the other hand, we have seen that the student disagrees with this because he considers that this is not going to save money. The university will still have to maintain the buildings, and maybe these buildings are going to provoke a fire, and that is going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that if they want to demolish it, they will have to pay workers, and that is also going to cost a lot of money. He also considers that the alternative gyms are not easily reached by other students because they are far away from the university, they are too expensive, and many people who work out by night will not be able to find a taxi. All right. There we are. Okay, so as you managed to notice, of course, there is a structure, right, that I am following. Some phrases are repeated always in my illustrations, and that is what we're going to get into right now. Let me show you. Here we have the structure, okay, of the response. So let me show you, okay? What is the structure I am following my response, and I also recommend you to follow, okay, when you are responding, because remind that tomorrow, the only thing we're going to do is practice and practice and practice for this particular task, okay? So please write down this structure, take notes on it, because it's going to be very useful for you tomorrow when we are practicing for this section, which I think it's super important to do it, right? Now, what is the model of the response? The model of the response is very simple. The first thing I say is to begin with in the reading passage, and then I say basically, or I offer my summary of the reading passage, right? Remind that I told you, if you have extra time in those 4 or 5 seconds when you are allowed to read the reading passage, try to always go summarizing, try to write down, if you have that extra time, what is going to be more or less what you're going to offer as a summary of that reading passage. And that summary is what you have to include here to begin with in the reading passage, and then comes your summary of the reading passage, right? So whatever the reading passage said, you have to state it here, remind, super concisely, in a very cursory manner, rapid, okay? Without taking too much time, without being so much specific. Very, very generally, okay, concisely. After you finish your summary of this part, you mention this phrase. On the other hand, right? On the other hand is a connector, right? In this case, we are using on the other hand because we want to contrast, right? This reading passage with the conversation that we have later listened to. And that is the reason why we're using on the other hand, right? On the other hand, right? And then it comes the summary of the listening item. It's as simple as that. The only thing you have to do is, on the other hand, right? There is one student in the conversation that disagrees with this particular change in the university, right? And afterwards, as you can see, I am mentioning here first speaker's reasons, second speaker's reasons. And of course, that is part of the summary of the listening item. But the reason why I am specifying this particular speaker's reason and second speaker's reason, it's because I want you to understand that it's super important to include, okay, in your summary of the listening item, what arguments is the speaker including in order to sustain the opinion that he or she holds of this particular matter. Then there's somebody who just got into the class. Oh, no, okay, wonderful. So, as I was mentioning, what is the idea? That you have to say, on the other hand, and you offer the summary that you have done or that you have composed of the listening item, right, of the conversation. And the reason why I am specifying here first speaker's reason, second speaker's reason is because I want you to understand in your summary, you have to be super, super careful to include what is the first reason the speaker or the student has for holding the opinion he is trying to defend or to express. Okay, for example, in this case, in the last illustration, the student said, right, it's not a great idea to shut down the fitness center because, first of all, if they want to save money, tearing it down is going to cost them even more money because they're going to have to hire workers and to pay for trucks, right? That will be his first reason for holding that opinion. Afterwards, he mentioned a second opinion. He said, also, the private fitness centers that the university has somehow made a deal in order for us to use them are very far away from campus, right? That is his second argument or reason for holding that opinion. So as you can see, my main objective here in my summary of the listening item is always mentioning what are those arguments, reasons that the student has for sustaining his opinion, all right? So don't forget that in your summary of the listening item, it's super important that you have to include the first speaker's reason for holding that opinion and the second speaker's reason for holding that opinion, all right? This is the structure, it never changes because, as I say, this is an exam that is filled with patterns, okay? So every direction you look at, you're gonna find a pattern and a pattern and a pattern. And this is not an exception. The student is always going to offer 2 or 3 reasons for holding the opinion he has. If he, for example, mentions a third argument, well, of course, you're going to include in your summary of the listening item what the third argument he is mentioning. This is simply an outline, right? If he mentions, for example, 4 arguments, then of course, in your summary, I strongly recommend you to include those 4 arguments he is mentioning for holding the opinion. And remind, the picture of a journalist here. In this case, you never say if you agree or disagree with the arguments he gives, okay? Never, don't say it. The only thing you do is you stick to the topic, you are very objective, and you just describe, you just convey, you just transmit what the speaker said. If you disagree, okay, you say it, he disagreed. If he offered this and this opinion, you offer, okay, he disagrees because of this and this opinion. You never say, and I also have something else to say. No, you never say that. Or, oh, and I can complement this. No, okay, not a good moment, not the moment to do it, all right? Just summarizing, staying objective to the topic, okay? Okay, now I wanted to know if there are any questions with regard to the structure. Any questions, dear Nata and Paola, about the structure that you have to follow, the template? Anything?
No.
All right. Paola, what about you? Any concern here? Anything that I can help you with?
The second point, please, teacher.
Yes, yes, of course. So as I was mentioning, dear Paola, after you offer, right, the summary of the reading passage, that is the objective of this first part of the structure when it says to begin with in the reading passage, and then you offer the summary that you have composed of the reading passage, right? After you finish that very, very concise and short summary, you have to say, on the other hand, and why are you mentioning that? you are saying, or you are using that connector on the other hand in order to contrast the reading passage with the listening passage, with the listening item or passage, okay? So on the other hand is the connector you're using in order to now describe your summary of the listening item. So after you say on the other hand, you just offer the summary that you have composed of the listening item in this case. And reminds that it's very important to include in your listening summary the first speaker's reason and second speaker's reason that that the student has in order to sustain the opinion he's trying to defend. For example, in this case, right, Paula, the student mentioned, for example, that it would be a very bad idea to tear down the fitness centers because of two reasons. He said, first of all, because that will cost a lot of money to the university and they are allegedly trying to save money. And secondly, that he said that the private gym centers across the city are far away from campus and the students do not want to go there because it's very expensive to reach those places. So those are the reasons, right? The student is proposing for holding the opinion that he has, that is to say that he dislikes this change. He doesn't like the idea that this fitness center is going to be shut down. And why? Why does he dislike the idea? Well, because of those reasons, right? So in your summary, always include, right? Always include what are those reasons that the speaker holds for having that opinion, okay? That is what you have to do. On the other hand, and you start your summary of the conversation or the listening item. And remind that your summary must always contain those particular points. First speaker's reason for holding the opinion and second speaker's reason for holding the opinion. If, for example, he has a third one, a fourth one, of course, mention them. But normally, the first speaker's reason and the second speaker's reason are the only opinions he has. What about now, Paula? It's fine, or maybe I can clarify something else?
It's fine, teacher.
All right, thank you very much, Paula. Okay, there we are. So as you can see, your students, that is what the structure is about, right? It's not difficult. Simply first summary, second summary, right? To begin with, in the reading passage, you offer your summary of the reading passage, of course. On the other hand, and you offer your summary of the listening item, but being always careful that you are including what? The first speaker's reason and the second speaker's reason. Very important, okay? Now that we have seen that, let's get into some recommendations I have for you in this section. What recommendations are those? These ones. For this section, you must be very general, dear students, and concise while summarizing both materials you will receive. Nonetheless, if you are going to emphasize in one item, let it be in the listening item, okay? Namely, spend more time summarizing the conversation you just listened to. Okay, this is a very good recommendation. Why, dear students? Because maybe you are questioning or asking to yourselves, right? Given that I have to offer two summaries, one summary of the reading passage and one summary of the listening passage, in which one should I spend more time, or which one should I dedicate more emphasis on? Well, the answer is super simple. You should emphasize and spend more time offering your summary or talking about the listening part. That is to say, offer more time and emphasize more on what the summary of the conversation is. That is to say, talked about what the speaker believed, what was his opinion, what opinions he held for having that opinion. Spend more time in that part. That is to say, summarizing the listening item instead of the first one. Why? Because the first one, the reading passage, is super easy to copy, right? The reviewers know that you, for example, could in your extra time go and write down exactly the same words of the reading passage and to, of course, deliver it perfectly. So they don't care about the reading passage very much. What they care about is how well you can summarize and how well you can express the listening part, because of course you are not able to copy that and to transcribe all the information that they have mentioned in the conversation, right? But if you manage to offer a very good response, a very good summary of the listening item, and you spend more time, emphasize more on that part, you're going to receive a higher score because your reviewer is going to say, oh, wow, I mean, this test taker is able to integrate his abilities, her abilities, and it's able to communicate something that he is not looking at, but he has just listened to once, right? So that is the reason why I recommend you always emphasize, stay more time discussing, summarizing the listening item rather than the reading part, okay? Very good recommendation. Also, not necessary to specifically state to your students what person in the conversation said any specific thing. Avoid expressions like, for example, the woman said this and the man responded this. or he added this and she later said this. Okay, this is very important, dear students. Remember that, of course, in the conversation, you're going to have two persons discussing, right? And because of that, maybe you are tempted to say, for example, something like this. In the listening item, we have seen a conversation, and one student says that he disagrees. The other one responds to him that it is a bad idea. The male student replies that it is actually not a bad idea, but it's actually a good idea because of the following reasons. The other student responds this. I mean, that interchange, right, that you are mentioning of the dialogue of the students saying, she said this, and he responded this. He said this, and he replied this, right? That interchange of dialogue is something that you shouldn't mention, dear students. That is to say, try to stay focused on what? On what the main speaker mentions and use. Try to focus on what the main speaker mentions. For example, I think that you have noticed until this point that in the conversation, there is always a main speaker, right? There is somebody who is offering arguments, reasons for holding his or her opinion. The other speaker is merely a secondary speaker. He is just somehow supporting the conversation. He says, for example, if the main speaker says, oh, I disagree with this. I think it's a terrible idea because of these reasons. And the other person says, oh, yeah, tell me, right? He's not adding anything positive nor relevant to the conversation. No, the only thing he's doing is, as I say, supporting, receiving the information, listening to it, making some remarks, but he never mentioned anything relevant. So you have to, as I say, concentrate on what the main speaker says, okay? That is my recommendation. That is to say, in your response, always start directly summarizing the opinion of the main speaker and also summarizing what reasons the main speaker holds for that opinion, okay? It's not necessary to mention the other person. You're not required to say, the main speaker said this, but the secondary speaker replied this. No, not necessary. You can simply obviate him. You can simply despise with him. Why? Because you can use the mentions or the words the secondary speaker says just as what? As complementary information or supplementary information to your response. That is the only use you're going to make of the secondary speaker, okay? So my recommendation, try to always focus on the main speaker, the person who is offering her or his opinion. That is the one that you have to comment about, okay? Talked about what he believes. Why does he believe that? Why is he taking this opinion? Why or what are his final remarks? Concentrate on that person. And the other one, obviate it. Just use, for example, if he says something, try to use that as secondary information, but never mentioning him, right? It's not necessary, okay? That is my second recommendation. Now, it is going to be advantageous, dear students, that if you prepare your response or your sheet response in an interlude between the first task and the second one with the outlines you'll follow. What do I mean by this? Remind that I have a structure that I have shared with you, right? This is a structure that we're going to follow in the response. Now, you're going to have a sheet of paper, right, on the exam. What my recommendation is, the third one, is that you should write down an outline of your response in or on the sheet of paper when it's in blank, so that what you are going to do after you receive the material, it's just fill in the blank spaces, okay? So the first thing you do after starting the second task is always writing down on your white sheet of paper what is going to be the general outlines you're going to follow. That is to say, write down the structure, copy this structure into your sheet of paper, because by doing so, you're going to have your response organized, and also you're going to be able to fill the information that's lacking in those blank spaces, okay? So make sure to include those blank spaces for you to leave some space to, include the information you're going to be inserting in your response, okay? And of course, as you can see on the other hand, and there I am leaving some space for me to write down the arguments that the speaker holds, okay? That is what my third recommendation is. Try to always write down this outline or this structure on your sheet of paper, and then just fill the blank spaces with everything you're going to say, all right? Have your summary somehow replicated and also stated in those blank spaces, okay? That is my third recommendation. And finally, fourth recommendation, while responding to your students, may be useful to set your eyes on your paper, okay? Because remember that if you're taking the IBT version, there's going to be a lot of movement besides you. Somebody's going to be moving there, somebody on the other hand, somebody in front of you. So maybe a lot of things are going to, work out so that they distract you. How are you going to avoid that? For example, take your sheet of paper, right? Like this one, and try to set your eyes directly to the sheet of paper with your outlines here and with everything you have written, so that, well, when you are responding, you just look at it directly, and that way you're not going to get concentrated by any other thing, right? Try to always look at the sheet of paper like this, right? Directly to the sheet of paper, and then you're not going to set aside your eyes from your paper, and that is going to, of course, help you with concentration, all right? That is my fourth recommendation. Any final questions, dear students? Anything that I can help you with to clarify? Nata, Paola, please, anything? No questions? Nata, Paola?
No, nothing, teacher.
All right. What about you, Nata? Are we fine?
No, we're fine.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay. So this is where we're going to stop today. Tomorrow we are going to practice. Okay. So please bring tomorrow your sheet of paper with you, your pencil. Don't go yet because I have to tell your assistants. And please remind that it is very important for you to practice. Okay. So I'm going to be sending, of course, tomorrow to the WhatsApp group a lot of material, free material for you to practice. But for today, please help me with the traditional poll. We always feel, you know, you help me a lot. Okay. Responding positively. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to take your assistance. If you have any other question, you can please say it while we're checking the assistance so that we can collaborate with that. Another question. Remind tomorrow we're going to practice. Okay, I'm going to give you a lot of exercises. So please have your microphone ready tomorrow to respond, because you are going to be practicing. Of course, I'm going to be offering you some feedback for you to improve your responses. Okay, so let me go with the okay, with this. Here we are. So is here present Marlena Natalia Morinigo? Okay, Natalia Fernanda Cerruto.
Here.
Thank you very much, Natalia. What about Cerruto Sebastián Emilio? Okay, Sebas was not present today. And finally, Paola Manzaneda. Alejandra.
Present, teacher.
Thank you very much, Paola. All right, there we are. So as you can see, that has been today's class. Thank you very much for your responses. And as you can see, that is going to be all for today, okay? Wonderful. So what is the idea for tomorrow? Bring your piece of paper, bring your pencils. We're going to practice and practice and practice, okay? Have a wonderful night, and thank you very much for your presence. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Nata. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Paula. Bye-bye.